Okay, we're connected. Hopefully, you can hear me. When it starts like that. A few people on. I just wait a second here. Okay, I think we can start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good evening, everyone. We're continuing to talk about the Girimananda Sutta. This sutta that in the so remember that sanya, the quality of the aggregate of perception, is not entirely passive. It's something that we can cultivate. We can control our perceptions to a certain degree. And the Buddha here gives us 10 ways of perceiving that are skillful, that will lead us on time. Non-delight is, which is the negative of the verb to delight in, to find favor in, to enjoy, to seek pleasure in. This is abharati. And this particular perception is a encouragement to develop nikama, or renunciation. It's turning away burdens and suffering that are incumbent in samsara. Someone's saying in the chat, it seems to be playing up again. I hope the audio is uninterrupted. I see that the video is a little glitchy. It's freezing every now and again, which I'm finding distracting. But as long as the audio is coming through clear, that's not really a big concern. So we're talking about anabhirati in the mode of perception. Now, to if kind of a cynical view of existence of the world, but to develop a particular perception that turns the mind inward, instead of seeking delight in the objects of the senses. If one's trying to develop meditation, one has to go inward and turn away from the senses. This is the meaning of renunciation. And Indriyas, the sense faculty, requirement for developing deep meditation. The whole definition of jhana is a transcendence of the sense desire realm, the kama bhumi. And as long as the mind is engaged in the objects of sense, then one cannot develop samadhi to the point of jhana. It's just not possible. And this is this is one of the niwaranas, is the primary niwarana probably is a sense desire. And in terms of meditation, this is can be quite obvious when it's something uh, strongly appealing to the senses. Strongest examples probably being food and sex, but in terms of meditation, we're also just talking about very subtle movements of the mind to taking interest in or delight in objects of the senses: sight, sound, smells, touches. And as long as the mind is engaged in that way, it's not going to make that transition out of the kamabhumi. So developing this perception of non-delay in the Visuddhimagga of perception of certain signs and particulars leads to certain mental states. And the context in the Visuddhimagga is the overcoming of sensual lust through the use of 32 parts of the body meditation. When we look at a human body and feel sexual desire, it's because the mind is focusing on certain signs and particulars that appeal to us. Or ignoring other signs and active aspects like and bones and blood and sweat, and they're all present. I mean, the appealing, desirable aspects are there; they're present, but so are the unappealing aspects. And the way our mind chooses to focus, which signs and particulars we choose to focus on, will affect how the mind reacts. So we can generalize that principle to the world as a whole. Developing this perception of anabharati is when we consider existence in the world, in any form of existence, whether it's a human or a deva or a Brahma, we can consider the desirable aspects and focus on that, and this leads to delight in the world. Or we can focus on the more fundamental, deeper reality marked by the three characteristics that this world that we're taking delight in is empty, it's insubstantial, it's impermanent. Whatever we take delight in will become separated from us, it will become destroyed and fully satisfied. Perceiving things through that lens, we're seeing things through the lens of the three characteristics, then we can lump them together and generalize it into non-delight in the world. We're not perceiving things in that way. So this is something very much to be cultivated if you want to make progress in meditation, is to, as I say, not develop a negative aversion to the world or existence. That's also a mistake, but to see things in an equanimous, neutral way, that this existence is samsaric. It's dukkha, and one contemplation that can be useful here is to if you find yourself taking delight in aspects of the world, particularly projecting the mind forward and hoping for a good rebirth, to ask yourself, is anything of this worth coming back into existence for? The very fact of manifestation, coming into a manifest form, or what we loosely call existence, is itself a kind of Sunta consider is everything is possible. But once something becomes manifest, it's like a bit of brokenness. It's imperfection. It's no longer has infinite potential. It's a very limited fragment of reality. And if we're delighting in that, we're delighting in fragments and imperfections. Um, so we could also consider this from the point of view of the cravings, the tanha. There's the first tanha is always mentioned is the sense desire craving, which is kind of also the craving for tanha. Sense desire craving is relatively superficial in our mind, but it's noisy. So it usually commands the most attention. But the deeper factors are the desire for existence and the desire for non existence. And just like I say, you shouldn't cultivate a negative repulsion to the world. That leads to vibhava tanha. The delight in the world leads to bhava tanha, the desire to become, to be, which alternates with the desire not to be, the desire to annihilate existence. And both of these paradoxically keep us in the samsaric loop. Anabhava is neither one of these. It's taking a and not falling into either craving or repulsion. And finally, I'd like to bring it back to the theme of this sutta as a whole is the perception. Remember, we're talking about a perception to be cultivated. So it's a way of looking, a way of perceiving the world, and perceiving the world as marked by the characteristics as fundamentally insubstantial, as empty, as impermanent or transient, and as dukkha, as in imperfect, unable to satisfy. In that way, then to explore deeper states of consciousness. So I'll stop there. I'm finding it. I'm glad the audio release is holding out. I'm finding this kind of glitchy video is annoying. Let's see. There's already one question there. According to Theravada, does bowing before the Buddha image create positive karma? Yes. Yeah. Any these kind of devotional acts are karmically wholesome. Mahayana says prostrations are beneficial, and people do them hundreds of thousands of times. Yeah, I know that's a practice in Buddhism. We generally don't consider major reverence in the mind with the Buddha consciousness. Next question. Is avoiding sensual pleasure skillful for a layman? For example, does abstaining from sexual activity can help one have a heavenly rebirth? No, I don't think celibacy necessarily leads to Dewa rebirth, if that's what you're seeking. You should certainly abstain from sexual misconduct, which means basically cheating on your partner. It's also beneficial to abstain from sexual activity for periods of time. Just keeping the 8 precepts as a practice. It may have some celibacy would have some advantage in a rebirth in the Brahma world, but not in the Deva world. Is a sensual existence, so there's no, as long as the sense pleasures are lawful, that they're not breaking precepts, then they're no hindrance to rebirth in the Deva realm. How to cure hard to? Yeah, if you, one thing is to begin relaxing. This is my personal advice: is to begin relaxing the mind for a while before you go to bed, particularly abstaining from screens. Don't watch TV or play with your phone right before bed. That stimulates the mind too much. Try to get yourself in a quiet, relaxed frame of mind without too much busyness before you lie down to sleep. Next one. You told the story, Bante, of the guy that was in the park and the horse came and he went to the park and the horse came and he went to princess and became king, but he had to kill his brother, but later renounced any comic result. I don't recall that. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I have no idea what you're referring to there. Can accumulation of merit make the effects of already created negative karma less severe? That's how I understand the lump of salt simile. Yes, that's true. For those who aren't familiar with it, the lump of salt simile is the Buddha's talking about karmic results. Have an occasional. It's different than the same act done by someone who habitually does bad deeds. He says it's like the throwing a lump of salt into a glass of water would make it too salty to drink. It would taste horrible. But throwing it into a big reservoir of water, thousands of gallons, you wouldn't even notice it. And it's like the accumulation of all the good merit kind of drowns out the small mistakes. How come the Devas don't come down anymore like they used to during Buddha times? I think primarily because there's no Buddha here. We have the canon to this plane of Exuda and get teachings from the Buddha to come here. According to Theravada, is it even possible that Pure Land exists? Yeah, there is it's understood a little differently, but there is a realm of existence that's called Suddhavasa, which could be translated as Pure Land. Or you're saying I'm not talking about pure abodes. Well, the Pure Land in the strictly Mahayana understanding, that's kind of contradictory to Theravada teaching, because the Buddha doesn't exist. The Buddha doesn't exist after he enters Nibbana. So Not, or he's not manifest or not, but he's not a being. I didn't know about that. What's a common purification practice in Theravada tradition? Um, I would say primarily keeping, for lay people, keeping the 8 precepts on a period of time. That's a purification. Do you think the suttas agree with Abhidhamma on how much physical feeling Vedana is a result of past karma? Well, that's a complicated question. Um, the the approach of the suttas and the Abhidhamma on of the Buddha about karma in the suttas, it's usually in a very general way, and most often it's focusing on what kind of karma leads to what kind of rebirth. So you could say it's at a very coarse grained level, whereas the Abhidhamma tries to bore down and look at things on the level of mind moments, um, and it becomes the explanation of karma becomes almost like a one-on-one accounting that my, volitional mind moments of skillful or unskillful karma lead to resultant mind moments of unpleasant or pleasant feeling. Uh, are there still monks that cure? But I have stories about monks one way or the other entirely. What is the unconstructed experience? Um, I think that would refer to nibbana, which is beyond the framework of cause and effect. So it's unconstructed. It's asankata. How can we practice meditation while working? To uh, um, and try to perform the work as skillfully as possible, and maintaining mindfulness on the task at hand. One of my teachers had a saying. One of his teachings was uh, that a thing of beauty is a result of love plus attention to detail. So when you're building something, making something, doing or any kind of job of work, really, if you can have a positive attitude, kind of love what you're doing, and pay attention to detail. Don't get lost in the overview, but pay attention to the minute components of the task. Aspect of Buddhism in your, I would say that thinking back to when I first became interested in Buddhism, and particularly the Theravada version, I think what really impressed me was the very pristine or pure way in which the Buddhist teachings dealt with the transcendental. That is nibbana. And every religion will have some kind of approach to a transcendent reality beyond this known reality. And it seemed to me that the Buddhist approach was the most it didn't try to So this mean I'm heading. If you're heading to lower realms, um, it's a sign that something's troubling you. If you want to try and improve your dream experience, do metta meditation before going to bed. One of the benefits of metta is he sleeps easily, he wakes easily, he dreams no evil dreams. I think you'll find that may help. What did you do as a layman, Bhante? Well, I did a lot of different things. I guess the last kind of wage job that I held for some time was technician on the railway. My brother is a scientific materialist who criticized Buddhism for clinging to nirvana. According to him, they should just accept annihilationism. How would you respond to this? Well, you could make sure you point out to him that nirvana is not annihilation. It's neither existence nor non-existence nor both nor neither. It's completely different from ordinary existence, but it's not annihilation. Because in one point here is that there's no self. Materialists think of, perceive any other possibility than material existence. So if one escapes material existence to a materialist, it just means they're annihilated. Next one. After my recent retreat, I feel like all my afflictions are even more present than before, which makes sense. I struggle coming back to my day routine. Any advice? Yeah, I would say keep up a daily practice and try and cultivate a wholesome attitude of being in the world. Like you have duties to perform. And it's another saying that this routine as a practice. Are there monks who smoke? Yes, in Thailand particularly. It's not uncommon. Bhante, could you explain karma using 5 aggregates? And in Abhidhamma, is it considered a chitasaka? No, it's not a chitasaka because it's not really a component of the mind. It's more like a process. In terms of the 5 aggregates, we can look at dependent origination because of sankharas. There arises a consciousness. Sankharas are the mental formations, and the particular here are volitional forms. A volition process in motion body, but it actually originates in the mind with the sankhara, and that causes consciousness to arise in this or that way as a result. And then feeling avedana arises upon the result of being pleasant or unpleasant. How will taking up the 8 precepts help accelerate the path to stream entry? I would recommend that for lay people to take the 8 precepts on occasion for a period of time. It's very difficult to try and live a life in the world keeping and it definitely will help. And if I can't answer it by email, we'll set up a talk one to one. What is the connection between dependent origination and nirvana? Stream entry is defined as seeing and ceasing, and also glimpsing the signless, or glimpsing the deathless, like Upatissa Siji's answer. Dependent origination and nirvana. Dependent origination is samsara, and nirvana is getting out of that loop. Opposites. Origination. The trick is to examine the mind for the three fetters, the three primary fetters of Sakaya Ditti, Silabbata Paramasa, and Wicikitcha. The first thing you would have to do if you're trying to determine whether you've attained stream entry is to do some research and learn what those three fetters actually mean, because the common English translations are actually quite confusing. They're usually translated as personality view, right and ritual clinging, and skeptical doubt. But you shouldn't rely on those translations. They treat animals like pets with metta and inspire good mental states, and can help them get a better rebirth. Yeah, I think so. I have a kind of a theory of animals like that, like pets, like our cats and dogs, that if they're, they live in a human home and they're treated well. I believe they're beings who just missed a human rebirth. They just didn't quite make the grade to be a human being. So they get to hang around human beings, and hopefully the example rubs off on them and they can take a human rebirth next time around. If arhats only think what they want to think, then doesn't that limit creativity? Yeah, I think at the end of the world system, they're probably destroyed. Because in fact, I'm certain of it, because there are phases of the world cycles where more than one world system is destroyed at a time. Like thousands of world systems are destroyed altogether. It's kind of interesting that we have three ways in which your world system comes to an end: by fire, by water, and by wind. And each kind wipes out more. So that's the smallest level of destruction, one solar system. And this galaxy will end up coming to its end when everything is sucked into the black hole, like water down a drain hole. So that's kind of an analogy of water destruction. And then the whole universe comes to an end when everything is dissipated and the energy of the Big Bang runs out. So that's like wind. What color is my shirt? Well, I don't know. I think that the computer mangles the color a little bit. It looks more like my computer, or it's the connection, but the text in the chat for me is kind of jumping around. I'm having trouble focusing on it. So I'll leave it for there. And next week there'll be no. I'm going to miss it next week. There'll be no live stream next Thursday, because I'll be at Temple Monastery in New Hampshire for a meeting of the North American abbots. So I'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. And we still have 2 more sessions to go on this series on the Giri Manandi Sutta. So wish you all have a